Well, we appreciate being here, and I will try to remember your name. I won't call you "Hey you." I'll do something better than that. But it is a privilege always to be here and to share what I have that God has put on my heart. I was preparing this afternoon. I do some things at last minute intentionally. And I think it's 10 or 12 countries that I've given this particular series in for students in Bible college or people that are building a church or basically building disciples. And that's really what that part is about. The theme is contained within the title, and it will develop as we go through. I can name the countries if you want, but that'll take too much time. But all over the world, Africa, Asia, the Orient, South America, lots of places where we have used this particular material that is pretty much devoid of doctrine to discuss, interpret, debate. This is an account of a real man who did something spectacular, although he didn't realize it at the time, that sets a model for us in who he is and what he does and how he does it. And the first question is, why should we be interested? Why should we study a 2,400-year-old book of Jewish history? I mean, right there you just go, yawn, let me out, please. I need a note from my mother, and I'm going to stay home. As I probably don't need that. But this man is as current today in building the wall, and we're going to take a liberty of using the wall, the term of the wall. There's a wall that needs to be built in your heart, because walls separate things that need to be on the outside and some things that are precious that need to be on the inside. You'll build a wall in your family, in your home. You'll build a wall at this church, coming together under God's leadership, God's ordained leadership, with God supplying what is necessary at the right time, to the right people, in the right place. And it's just amazing how this replicates across cultures. Think of anything that you might give if you would fashion yourself as a public speaker or preacher, teacher, evangelist, and have this same kind of a subject and the development go over. You know what I mean by go over. Be successful and understood and received from East Africa to the Far East of Russia and Siberia, into Asia, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, South America, Argentina and Chile, Mexico, and far north in Alaska, and all of it be accepted. It just has to transcend culture. Has to go over those things, because if you try to tell a joke, it usually won't translate. You might even offend somebody. If you talk politics, you're asking for trouble because you don't know what is going on locally. But this is something that's just amazing. This account, it's not a story, it's not folklore, it is an account of one of the greatest men in the history of all of Israel, and we'll come to his rank in just a few minutes. But this series will provide for you spiritual principles devoid of mostly doctrine, which I think you'll take a deep breath and be glad. It's not a doctrinal-oriented thing, but resources for your toolbox. And I'm talking in a spiritual sense that will prepare you for the building program that is ahead. Now, what are we going to build? All kinds of different things. There's all kinds of different things that need to be built, but they need some of the same dynamics, the same cooperation, the same processes to build something. Now, some of you are in construction, and you do it in a very orderly fashion. You don't build the roof first. You don't put up the sign first. There are other things that are done first, and then you build upon those things. Nehemiah is a challenging man because there's so many, and I'll just be real with you for a moment, so many men in the Old Testament that you can't relate to. How do you relate to a king? How do you relate to a major prophet? How do you relate to somebody who's written a book that goes into the Bible? And even in the New Testament, you'll find things that you just can't quite personally connect with those people and identify with them. Nehemiah is not a king. He's not a prince. He's not of royalty. He's not a priest. He's not a prophet. He's not a minister. He's not a pastor. He's just a guy. And that's the great thing about this account. He's just a guy. He's not anybody that thinks he's special or anybody that has recognized him. But he's just a guy. And I'm including the ladies as well. You understand. It's an anthropomorphic term. Men is not man. It's all mankind. And he's very inspiring. So you'll see some things as they develop. The first section dealing with prayer and work being inseparable. Nehemiah will demonstrate that these two elements work together. You cannot separate them. Dedicate yourself to one, devoid of the other. This is an overly simplified illustration, but it will be a memorable illustration. If you have a rowboat in a lake, calm lake, and you use one oar, let's call it work, the work oar. You just use one oar on one side. Now, you will have activity, but you won't have any progress. Right? Because you will go in the right-handed circle. If you switch over to the prayer oar and just give yourself totally, fully, 8 hours a day to the prayer needs and intercession, you'll go in a different circle, but you'll still go in a circle over on the left side. But for progress to be made, you got to put both oars in the water and you'll go forward. It doesn't matter that you go fast or slow, but you will go forward and not just have activity. Activity fools some people. I never did like busy work in school. I don't know if you did or not. But when I knew the teacher was giving me stuff to do just to keep me occupied until everybody else got their test finished, I didn't want to do that. It's busy work. It's just nothing. There's no point in it. I want something to be meaningful, to have a product, to make progress, to do something. And both oars are important in your personal life. So you may well lean toward one. I think most people do. They lean toward one and they have to kind of work at the other one. I mean, I'm not lining you up for federal charges here. This is just normal. It's just normal that you'd lean toward one and have to work at the other one. But it's important that you have both of these in your life. It's important that you have both of them in the body, in this local body. We will also see the importance of the work to be done through Nehemiah and what he does, what he accomplishes, and how the vision of the work connects to the work itself. What you see that needs to be done, that God has shown to you, needs to connect to real work. Let me put it another way. We need more in the local church than workers that have no vision. And we don't need those that are visionary, dreamers, and prophetic that won't work.
Amen.
Yeah, is that putting it clear enough? You know, well, I'm the idea man here. I'm not going to show up on work day. I've got the brilliant ideas for everybody else to do. No, you may have the brilliant ideas, but you need to show up on work day as well, and combine these two things, vision with the work itself. And if you're a worker, if you're not a public speaker, you'll pay the $1 million not to be standing up here. You know what I'm talking about? Just kill me now. In fact, the phobias that Americans have, there are more. Well, let me put it this way. The American Psychiatric Society releases the top 50 phobias of Americans every year, ranked the top 50. Number 2 is consistently for the past 40 years. Number 2 is the fear of death. Now, we see what's going on right now with the media fanning the flames, and I won't take this rabbit trail, but Americans' response in general has been, we are so afraid to die that we are willing to quit living. Yeah, that's good, isn't it, Paula? We're willing to quit living because we're afraid to die. Well, you can guess what number 1 is. The number 1 fear of Americans for 40 years running. Public speaking. Just shoot me now. Don't make me go up there. Well, we only need about 15-minute testimony. 15 minutes? Are you kidding me? That's a life sentence for most people. And I identify with you if you have that challenge. I didn't do well in speech class at all, but God laid something on me as a gift and as something to share that motivated me to stand up at a higher level than I wanted to sit down and be quiet. So it's still in there. It just got superseded. And so I understand how that works. I want to tell you about Nehemiah the man. Apparently he was born during the captivity of Israel. And this touches on some of the sad history during the time when Israel was taken captive by Babylon and carried away. They were carried away as slaves. They didn't kill them. They usually just took them as slaves and took their land. He was raised in a home, apparently, that taught and believed that Jehovah was the one true God, and it shows in his life as he grows up. But here's something very interesting, that the Babylonian government officials saw honesty and dependability in this group of slaves. Now, technically they're slaves. They're captives of war. But they saw good qualities in some of these people, most of these people, and they appointed them to government positions of some importance. Now that seems crazy now because doesn't it? Except they did this kind of thing. They would say, we see good qualities. We don't want you as a man to go to waste. We're going to give you a position where you can help us. Now, we're not going to pay you because you're a captive of war. You're a slave, technically. But to do a job is pretty amazing. We've seen the horrors of other kinds of captives, like in World War II and so forth. That this was not like this at all. Nehemiah was one of those that was seen as trusted and reliable, and he was given the title and the position of cupbearer to King Artaxerxes, cupbearer to the king. Now, in our culture, we don't have this kind of person, but to call him a domestic servant or a personal butler falls way short of what Nehemiah did in his position, because his primary function was to taste and to the food and the drink served to the king. Now, there were checkpoints along the way in the lines of source and in the kitchen, but there are those out there that want to poison the king. And so Nehemiah was the man at every meal that tasted the food before the king ate. Now, don't you know that Nehemiah got to know those people in the kitchen? And those people that were sourcing the food being brought in the back door? Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you get to know those folks? Because your life's on the line. You're protecting the king, and that rightfully so. But in being in this kind of position, he has confidential and personal access to the king that nobody else has. Do you see that? You see that he has access to the king because, he's going to say, this dish is okay. And if it's got Paula's salsa on it, it's more than okay. It's fabulous. You make it like they do in South America, and it is just wonderful, wonderful. But the confidential access to the king was something that Nehemiah had in his position. The king saw good things in Nehemiah. You wouldn't, if you saw some skunk, slimy, bad news kind of a guy, oh yeah, let's make him cupbearer. I don't think so. You want the very best individual, the most trusted individual on the planet, would you not? If you had any fear of being poisoned, and in politics, it always happens, or at least there's attempts. So Nehemiah had a unique position, and the model of dedication that he gives to us, we don't find anywhere in his writings that Nehemiah set a personal goal to be a hero, but he was, and he still is, because he took to heart the promptings and the priorities of God to accomplish God's purpose. He wasn't trying to make a name for himself. He wasn't trying to make any money. This position didn't pay anything that we could tell. But I have discussed what I'll call the superstars or the heroes of the Old Testament with Orthodox Jewish rabbis in Jerusalem. And we don't think of it that way usually, superheroes of the Old Testament. Well, if you're in Marvel Comics, maybe you do. But usually theologians don't. But they rank these men this way: Abraham, Moses, then comes David, the king, and then, maybe surprisingly, in position 4 comes Nehemiah and Ezra. Two partners. Ezra was a scribe and a priest, but he worked in conjunction with Nehemiah, the cupbearer, so close in their ministry in Jerusalem later on that extra biblical sources tell us that Nehemiah and Ezra were buried in the same grave. That's how close these two men were, and they worked hand in hand in ministry in a non-competitive way to benefit the nation of Israel. But this Nehemiah is way up there. I mean, Abraham, Moses, and David, those are the heavy hitters. I mean, those are the big dudes. And to be right in there, if you desire to do something great for God, and I'm just going to assume you do, or you want your life to be to His glory, Nehemiah is a great model of dependability and dedication, that you can follow him not only in lifestyle, but also specifically for the task that is ahead. I want to give you an awareness point, and this might be interpretive or questioned or discussed at some point, but I'll give you one man's opinion. You are being prepared for leadership. Now, in no way should you quote me as saying, Mark said in a prophetic fashion, I am going to be in leadership. No. I don't know that you're going to be, but I know that God is preparing you for that. He's training you in the qualities and the traits, and none of it will go to waste. If you don't come to a place of leadership in a local church, none of it's wasted, because it's going to improve you, your life, your testimony, your influence many-fold as He prepares you for leadership. Not everybody is ready to be promoted. Some people really have a fear of success, and they self-sabotage, and undermine their own efforts in many cases. But if you, let's say you have the same training, the same educational background, and the same experience that your pastor did or does. I'm not trying to be specific with Pastor Jonathan, but you've gone to the same school, you got better grades, and you know what's going on. If you know what the pastor is up to, you're going to make a better disciple to follow, to be a follower. You know, and I don't mean to be pejorative because we're in Indian country, but this is just an old saying. We have enough chiefs. We need more Indians. And I'm not talking about Indians. You know what I'm talking about? We've got enough people in leadership right now. We need more people at the worker level that are dedicated, that will support the leadership that God has appointed. But there is some turnover. There is some expansion. There is some retirement. There are openings that God has. And they said, well, there's not any church around here for me to be pastor. Well, you start one. You just start one. You know, if God has called you to do that and nothing is available, then you find a place and you do what God is calling you to do. Well, to bless you and to prosper you and to promote you, I think, is His plan for you. But in that, He will give you more responsibility. And if you don't respond in the responsibility category, then you can't be promoted. You may be the greatest person around that everybody loves, but if you're flaky in responsibility fulfillment, what are we going to do? We can't put you in charge of anything because you don't follow through. Oh, but he's got lots of talent, lots of potential. It doesn't matter. If we are not faithful, God can't use us. So, well, I'll pray for faithfulness to come to me. Nope, you got to make a decision about that. You got to bring that to the table. God's going to give you abilities. He's going to give you spiritual gifting. He's going to give you insight. He's going to give you power. He's going to give you wealth. He's going to give you prosperity in your health. But if you decide not to be faithful, none of it is going to matter. I don't care how talented you are. If you play all instruments by yourself at the same time and sing 4-part harmony at once, we can't use you because you won't show up. So this is the trick question. What can God do with an unfaithful man? Well, the first answer is nothing. But the second answer is piercing. He can use you for a bad example. I don't want that. Even a stopped clock is right twice a day. That's not enough. That's not enough. That's a bad example. We got to be faithful to do what God has called us and empowered us to do. So there are some commentators that will actually criticize Nehemiah for remaining in the employment of the king because he's like a traitor. He's like a turncoat. He's working against the Israeli captive society they project. But God needs a man in that spot. He needs a man close to King Artaxerxes to influence him, to give him advice, and to touch his heart. And Nehemiah is in that position, and he stays there faithful. So I want to read the first 4 verses of chapter 1 that just open this thing to you. You've got it on the 3rd page of your yellow handout, and we'll probably not read any more verses than this. I can see that the clock is already working against me. But we got a late start, though, didn't we? That's right.
We did.
Yeah. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. And it came to pass in the month Chislew in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan, the palace, that Hanani, one of my brethren, came, he and certain men of Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews that had escaped, which were left of the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said unto me, the remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem also is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. And it came to pass, when I heard these words, that I sat down and wept and mourned certain days and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. All construction activity to rebuild the city of Jerusalem that had been sacked had been actively opposed by the neighboring Samaritans and some of the other surrounding groups of people. You know, once your enemy is down, you don't want to see them build back up. I mean, that's just natural, isn't it? And so they opposed any construction activity that was going on until in 446 BC, and this is a good intersection of Scripture and scriptural accounts with secular history that we can verify. In 446, all construction in Israel was mandated by King Artaxerxes to be stopped. So not only do they have opposition from the neighbors, now they've got the king that has made it legal to enforce the stoppage. You can't rebuild your house, you can't rebuild the temple, you can't rebuild the walls that are broken down, you can't rebuild the gates that are of wood and they've been burned, at least partially burned. But as a result of not completing the construction, and you've seen that even today in some things, the walls developed bigger cracks and the gates, the wooden gates, further degraded because they weren't repaired in a timely fashion. So now it's getting worse. And the gates suffered at the hands of the opposition. And here's something that we don't easily identify with, but the lack of continuous walls around Jerusalem prevented Israel from developing a strong national identity, from establishing respect from the surrounding nations. In addition, it left Jerusalem open to attack from armies in the daytime and bands of robbers at night, and wild beasts, animals could come in at night, and they were just vulnerable in all kinds of ways. The walls of Jerusalem represented then and now security, safety, and strength to the nation of Israel, and even those living in and around Jerusalem, because even if you didn't live inside the walls, you were considered part of the greater family. Nehemiah was brought this bad news by his brother and some other men from Israel, from the province of Judah, that came. And in verse 4, we see what his response was, that he sat down. I mean, this was overwhelming news. I don't know if you've ever had a knock at the door in the middle of the night, and the sheriff is there to give you some news. It's never good. It's never good. I've had that experience, and I wish I didn't. But Nehemiah responds to this. And let me just branch to a couple of other excuses that you may have heard. I won't accuse you of doing it, but other people that you know might have. When they hear of a calamity, when they hear of a need, when they hear that there's a people group with a need or a city that has a problem, well, that's sure too bad, but what can one person do? True? Okay. Now, Nehemiah is just one person. He doesn't have that excuse. Or this, well, I wish I had time to help them, but my schedule is really full. Just about everybody is busy. Now, they may not be productive, but they're busy. You know what I'm saying? In fact, if you want something done these days, if you will ask the busiest person you know to do that, and they say yes, they are managers of their time, and they will find time to do that. They won't make time because you don't have that capability, but you will find time to do it. If you ask the guy that's just taking a nap on the porch in the lazy bar, what is it?
Lazy boy.
Lazy boy, thank you. he's got all the time in the world, but he won't ever get around to it. He's much too busy. Are you with me? He'll never get it done because he doesn't get anything done. Well, I wish I had the time to help. My schedule is full. Or sometimes a little bit of spiritual pride will creep in and say, well, I've obeyed and honored God with my life. Why don't they follow my good example? Why don't they just do what I've done with my life? Hey, inspect away. Well, here's the other one. We need to organize the concerned citizens of Jerusalem and print some signs and have a march. That'll change something. Maybe. What does it change? Well, the sign printer is glad to see you coming in. Whoever prints those signs likes it a lot. But have you ever known a march of any kind, good, bad, indifferent, of any kind, to do anything? Well, we could break some windows. My point exactly. Let's just march because the people in Jerusalem have some needs. Well, Nehemiah understood when he heard a serious situation and God touches his heart and yours, he's talking to you. He wants a response. This isn't just news time with God. Like, oh, well, hey, great to know. Thanks. Appreciate it. Keep me updated. No. When God brings some need to your heart and it touches a heartstring, you know what I mean? He's talking to you. He's wanting a response from you because you care. You care. So let's do more than care. Let's respond. And if God opens your eyes to a need, he may well be wanting you to be part of the solution, to meet that need, to be the answer. Now here's a facetious one. And I don't know if anybody in here is taller than me or not. Some of you are close. You know what? The top of the refrigerator gets dirty. See, some of you are looking at me funny because you're too short. You don't see it. You've never seen the top of the refrigerator. But if I see the top of the refrigerator is dirty, needs to be wiped down, I'm not going to call Pastor Jonathan. It's my job. If I see it and I care, I'm not going to pass the baton to somebody else. But we almost got a terminal disease in our culture about that. Well, let's get somebody, call somebody, and to take care of that. No, let's you take care of that. Well, I don't have time. Well, it's not important then, is it? If you can't cut loose some of your valuable time, then you want somebody else to take their valuable time. You get the point. The needs in the local body of Christ come in an assorted shapes and sizes. But every one of those needs requires someone who deeply cares about that need. That's why you folks have taken over the youth. Because you saw a need, God touched your heart, and now you're involved.
Told him the same thing. Thank you.
Is that right? Well, just consider it reinforcement because we didn't talk about that. I do think about a story. A missionary came to a church and was raising funds, of course, but also relating the success of their ministry and the needs that were there. And he really painted a sad picture of difficulty. You know, they were poisoning his well. The witch doctor was trying to burn down their hut. Nobody would come to the church. You know, just a whole series of real negative things. But he's willing to go back, you know, to take another tour. And there was a wealthy businessman in the congregation that came to him after the meeting, and he said, "Sir, I would not do what you are doing for $1 million." The missionary looked back at him and he said, I wouldn't either. This isn't a get-rich thing. This is being fulfilled in the calling of God that is upon your life.
Amen.
And to think about the contrast with money, it's like you'll get to the place where you'll think, this is just too hard. This is too hard. Everybody does, so don't think you're the only one. Everybody gets to the place in ministry, goes, I don't know, not enough people. They're trying to kill me out there. And I've had some assassination attempts myself in Pakistan. They're trying to kill me. Why? Mark, you shouldn't go to Pakistan. Why not? Well, they might kill you. You're going to scare me with heaven? Is that what you're going to do? What greater thing could there be? Oh, I understand you want me to die out here on a stupid interstate in a car accident. That's what you'd prefer. I'd prefer getting shot in Pakistan. Hello? Do you realize how many people would be affected if that happened? A lot of them. A lot of people would respond. Well, the earnestness of Nehemiah is tremendous because his heart is touched. God is calling to him, and he responds. And in verse 4, there's 4 verbs that are here that are very important. First, and the order of them is important as well. He wept. This is lengthy sorrow. It's just not a little girly cry at the end of the movie. He wept. He sat down and wept. You see, this is a lengthy sorrow. His countrymen were in bad trouble, and things were getting worse. And then it says he went into mourning. And for some days, he has a sadness of heart. If you told Nehemiah a joke during this time, he wouldn't laugh. He's sad. He's mourning about the city of God, Jerusalem. And then he fasted. He wasn't 10 pounds overweight and needed, to take a break. He's fasting because it is preparing his heart for the work that God has for him. There is a clarity that comes in your spirit when you fast. You may not lose any weight. That's not the point. And you don't tell anybody about it. You walk around with a toothpick when you're fasting, so they won't ask you to have something to eat with them. Are you with me? This is a private thing between you and God. And then we come to the real labor of the need. He prays. He starts to pray. I really, this is just a personal thing. This response that people have when stuff happens, oh my God, has trivialized God terribly. Everything is, oh my God. And then they go on, and they don't have a God. Well, none they'd admit. He didn't just say that. He began to pray because his heart is now ready. He's wept. He has mourned. He has fasted. And now he gets down to business. And he begins to pray. Often the battle is won while we're on our knees in prayer. And we rise to our feet, not only with the victory, but expecting in faith to see the manifestation of God's answer. But the battle is won often, not every time, but often, on your knees, in prayer about the need and what we should do. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. How often have we seen a need, and contrast these two terms? We react rather than respond. React rather than respond, spring into some logical action that somebody suggested, or maybe we thought of it, and then watch quickly as it becomes ineffective. And then when we can't think of anything else to do, well, I guess we'll pray now. It can't hurt anything. Well, duh. Prayer may be the first thing that we need to do, not the last. So in verses 5 through 11, we'll not read those tonight, but the burden of concern and prayer come next. And I want to disassemble Nehemiah's prayer. The elements of his prayer are just so very important, and I want you to note this is, I'm not giving you a formula for prayer, but this is a pattern. Do you understand the difference? Don't pray like Nehemiah, but be aware of the pattern of how he prays that may coach you along the path. Nehemiah focuses his attention on the characteristics of God. That's how he opens his prayer, rather than, God, I need some help right now. He knows how to pray. And he begins to relate the characteristics of God that reflect that he personally knows God. He's not a distant idea. He's not the cosmic icicle. He's not the deist's watchmaker who has set the universe in motion and is now just watching for us to take care of stuff. Many of the founders of this country were deists. They didn't believe God was interactive on a daily basis in your life. He was some distant force. They believed in him, but we're supposed to work this out. Well, that's another subject. Nehemiah begins with this: God, you are great. You are awe-inspiring. God, you're great. I'm stunned. I'm blown away when I think about what God has done in your life and in my life and in our lives together and in this church. But let me just give you something personal here. And if you need to forgive me, we'll take care of that. Watch your language. Well, we got saved. We could quit saying those words. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that when you overuse a superlative term, a high-level accolade, when you overuse it, it becomes worthless because it's common. You make a high-level word and compliment, you use it so often that it doesn't have any meaning anymore. Hot fudge sundae is awesome. Pepperoni pizza is awesome. The salad at Denny's is awesome. And then we come here and go, God, you're awesome. What? And, oh, by the way, the salad at Denny's isn't that awesome, I can tell you. I'm just using this as an example. Aren't there words that we need to reserve for God that are way up there, that hot fudge sundaes don't qualify, and the love for my mother doesn't qualify? You don't love ice cream and your mother and God with the same love. There ought to be worlds apart. Are you with me? Nehemiah is saying, when he says, you are great, God, you're awesome. But he doesn't call anybody else awesome and anything else awesome. Only God is awesome to Nehemiah. So I'm just saying, watch it. Save some terms for your worship of God. Save some back. I don't care which ones they are, but the high-level ones, the complimentary ones, the ones that recognize what he has done. Don't just commonly use those for everything, or you'll just demean everything. He says, God, you're faithful. You're faithful to your promises. That differentiates for us that God is not faithful to the promises you told him to keep. I've done that, have you? Now, I told you what to do. I told you with my wisdom what needed to be done, and you ought to be doing this, and you ought to get about taking care of it. I didn't pledge to do that. I will keep my promises. Find out what they are. There's a good starting point, is there? What has God promised to you? Find out, and then hold him to it. And he'll just smile like, when your 3 or 4-year-old comes up and says, Grandpa, you promised us you'd take us to Baskin Robbins. You promised. And you smile and go, oh, honey, I'm so glad you reminded me of that. Let's go. Did you forget? No. God might have to do that sometime and just pat us on the head. But you know what? If you don't know what God has promised, what are you going to do? What part of this prayer are you going to include? He also says, God, you are merciful more than anyone else. No one, including you. I've met people that they want to accuse God of being cold, hard-hearted, cruel, when justice is rendered. Well, if it were me, I'd have given him a 14th second chance. I'd let him out of jail right now. God, you must be really mean. Oh, really? And you're the merciful one in the universe. You've got more mercy and understanding and wisdom than God? I don't think so. Be careful when you wield that mercy club. And it is a club. The thinking that you, with your compassion and your heart and your experience, have more insight and more mercy in a situation than God Himself. You're treading on very dangerous ground when you're making yourself better. Because there's stuff, let me tell you, there's stuff about the situation that you don't know. Come on. And when you find out the other side of the story, oh, well, now I understand. Maybe.
My Bible says he's holding God to his promises when he's saying that word mercy.
Yes.
And then whenever he says awesome God, he says that it's like praying in Jesus' name, like what we do now.
Yeah. Now, here's just a note of advice from one man. Don't try to tell God how great and faithful and merciful you are. Just don't do that. Don't even go there. So then, we're still in Nehemiah's prayer. In verses 6 and 7, he has a confession. And this is really going into some interesting areas. Nehemiah fully identifies with the people in need, so much that he reveals his heart by using the pronoun we instead of they. God, help those people that are in the path of Hurricane Laura. Amen. They. Nehemiah says, we're in trouble. We have needs. He's identifying with the people that have the need, to where now that need has become his own need in prayer. They don't know it. They don't know who's praying. But, you know, to pray for people and their needs and let it be distant and separate and non-connected, you can only do so much. But when you begin to be inclusive, as Nehemiah is, and he says, we know that based upon what we have done, the blessing of God is not deserved. I hear it on the news, and you do too. A young person is prematurely taken in death. And some knucklehead always says, well, they didn't deserve that. Really? Well, what did you deserve? Before you came to accept Jesus as your Savior and your Lord, what did you deserve? Nothing good. In fact, if I went into it, you might be shocked of what you and I deserve. Well, God, I've been a good boy for a couple of weeks. Yeah, with my power, with my protection, with my making situations compatible for you to do what you do, but I've worked hard. Yeah, well, who gave you the ability to work? Who gave you the health to get out of bed this morning? Who gave you the memory to remember who in the world you are? It does come to you after a little while. Right, Larry? I mean, there's a little more of a gap than there used to be. But, who am I and what am I doing here? Oh, yeah, now I remember. You've never been to a class on memory to teach you how to remember. At the beginning. Who gave you that ability? Who gave you the ability to learn? To go to a class of any kind and remember and develop a craft or a trade or a degree or something. How'd you learn to learn? God has given you so much that if you began to write them down, you would run out of paper.
Amen.
If you wrote everything down that God has done for you, said, Mark, I've had a rough life. You don't know. You don't know rough till you've been in ministry. And I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. And so we don't use the phrase, and therefore, God, since I've been so good and faithful, you owe me this one. God doesn't owe you nothing. He doesn't owe you anything based on what you have done, except that you have accepted Jesus Christ into your heart, changed your life, your direction, your destiny, your future, and hopefully changes your heart from stone to a heart of flesh. That's what surgery by the Holy Spirit does within you. Changes your heart. Nehemiah is persistent. In verse 6, he makes an outrageous claim. He says, I've been praying day and night. Because I can't quickly forget a concern that's been laid upon my heart. I don't know if you've had children or grandchildren charged with a major crime and are pending trial. You won't sleep much. Why? Because you're praying. And I think you probably pray while you're asleep. Say, Mark, that's silly. Well, in time, in your Christian walk, you will have heavy needs that you will pray during your sleep, and you will receive the answer, and you will get up, you will have God's answer and the confidence that goes with it. And what did you do? You prayed while you slept. That's the only thing I can figure out. Because, here's the man going to ram. He has a job at the daytime. He can't stay up all night in prayer. What do you expect? I expect he went to sleep. But I expect his spirit. Did you know your brain doesn't go to sleep? You can still pray. You still think. You dream. You still have stuff going on. And Nehemiah, well, prayer helps me wait. Prayer helps my vision. Prayer comforts my heart. And prayer activates my faith. It's a good thing for prayer. It's not that you're going to change God's mind on so many things. It's not that you're going to activate some kind of miracle ministry. Much of the time, during prayer of intercessory type, prayer for other people, other needs, you get changed during prayer. It's not just for you. It's not just for the expression of your needs, but it's for you to change. And we change during prayer as we speak our priorities, as we speak the characteristics of God, and you speak them long enough, at some point you'll believe it. You'll actually convince yourself as you hear yourself pray out loud. I hope you don't pray all your prayers silent. Hope that if you're in the truck or maybe you have to get in the house where nobody else was, where you can run and jump and dance and sing and pray out loud, And don't be scared of the sound of your own voice. Some are, and then they're called on Sunday morning to lead in prayer and dismiss, and then, yeah, I'm not ready. Well, you probably never will be. Get ready to pray. It's as natural as breathing. It's that natural. Nehemiah's petition is given in the next few verses 8 through 11. We gain encouragement in giving our requests in prayer by reflecting on what God has done in the past. God's testimony, God's demonstration, your experience with God in the past will help you as you give your requests in prayer, and you realize that you can dwell upon a need so close, so great, so intense that you do, and this is fun to do this illustration in other countries, you can make a penny bigger than the sun. You know what you have to do? Hold it real close to your eye. And your problem becomes bigger than God. But if you'll get that coin out here in your hand and do a little comparison check, you'll see that, you have a need. There is something that you need to pray about, something that needs to happen in your life, but it's not impossible because you see how big God is. We don't just voluntarily make ourselves tiny and small and little. All you have to do is get a vision of how big God is, and you'll feel small enough, let me tell you. It's not about us getting small. Mark, you need to strap down that personality and be a little less rambunctious and think less of yourself. All you have to do is get a vision of how big God is, and you, in comparison, will be small without any false humility of trying to impress other people. Nehemiah 1:8 reflects that Nehemiah knew God's promises about captivity because God had prophesied a return to Jerusalem. It's recorded in Leviticus 26 and in Deuteronomy 30. Those two chapters specifically address the return of the Israeli captives of Babylon back to. We're going back. God has said it. God has decreed it. It's going to happen. He lives out his life in an importance and blends together. This man is a tremendous example for us because he balances the practical with the spiritual. Back to the two oars again. We need both of these things in our life and in our ministry. We need the practicality and we need the spirituality. We need wisdom and we need some work. Well, Nehemiah shows us a spiritually sensitive man. Listen to this one carefully. He knows when to pray. He knows when to wait. And he knows when to work. And those are different seasons concerning different needs. If you move too soon, too fast, you get ahead of God and you bust the door down, you ruin the opportunity for anybody to have a recovery. So in verse 11, I want you to note his specific request made to God. He says, and this will seem arrogant at first, God, make me successful. Make me successful. You see, this is not a selfish request from Nehemiah for personal wealth or gain. This is a request of a dedicated servant of God that wants to accomplish the purpose of God that God intends for him to. He's not looking at being famous. He's not looking at being rich. He's not looking at being liked. And there is a powerful force that we have in our culture. I want people to like me to the place where I'll give up any kind of... It's nutty that you think the person in the next car at you at the stoplight cares anything at all about you. And you'll turn the music down. You'll quit singing and jiving. You'll keep your fingers out of your nose. Because you want that person that you don't know to like you. It's powerful. Nehemiah doesn't care if anybody likes him. but he wants to be a successful servant of God and accomplish what God has in mind for his life. He's not concerned right now about Larry. He's concerned about Nehemiah serving God faithfully and accomplishing what God has intended. And he says, in that thought frame, God, make me successful. That's an unselfish prayer. Give me the power. Give me the wisdom. Give me the perseverance. Oh God, give me those things to accomplish what you have assigned to me, that I want to do, and I want to do them well. I want to do them with quality, and I want to do them before I die. In the second chapter, the first 4 verses are a great request made to God, and we're going to come back to that next week. But let me tell you something here. We skimmed over in reading the first chapter. In the very first verse, Nehemiah tells us what month it is. And if Levi were here, he could say it for us correctly.
He's doing laundry right now.
So,
But he's glad that we're recording.
yeah, that's good. It's December. I'll translate from the Hebrew calendar to the Gregorian calendar. It's December when he gets the news. He dates that in chapter 1, first verse. The first verse of chapter 2, he dates what's going to happen now. And it's April. 4 months have, well, that's 3.5, isn't it? Lawnmower took care of that. There's 4. 4 months since he heard the news. I call this the 4-month test. He's still praying. He's still concerned. He's still wanting to do what God is prompting him to do. It's not time yet. It's not God's time to move. It's time to be concerned. It's time to be in prayer. It's time to get yourself ready. I posed this. I used to be on staff at a pastor's training center for about 10 years in Far East Russia. Go to Siberia and go a little further. It's rough. And yeah, it's cold. But if you're born in Alaska, you're prepared and trained to do that kind of stuff.
It's almost home then, huh?
Almost. I asked this question, and it's supposed to be serious, and I'll ask you. Do you remember what you were praying about 4 months ago?
I write my prayers down.
Oh, well, see, that's good. Well, I had one young man in this pastor training center. His hand shot right up. I said, what have you been praying about? Money. I said, okay, I understand. I understand. You know, he said, I'm praying about that all the time. So what do we see about importance here? He's been praying 4 months. First, we know this is an abiding and lasting concern about the needs of Jerusalem. It's staying with him. We also know that it was a need he did not personally take lightly. He has accepted a heavy burden about this need. It might not have struck other people, might not have touched their heart, but it struck the man that God needed to do this job. He gets a lot of credit for power, and he gets a lot of credit for love, but he doesn't get much credit for being smart. You know that? He is so smart. He is so smart. He picks the right person at the right time, gives them the right gift, touches their heart in the right way, and wow, how did that happen? Not casually at all. We also see something concerning Nehemiah's attitude when he doesn't get an immediate answer in prayer. What do? Give up? Pray about something else? Change your attitude? You know what he did when he doesn't get an answer? He keeps praying. He just stays at it. God didn't say no. There was just no response at all. And so he just stays at it. Let me tell you this, and this is more philosophical, and I can't give you a verse for it. Let me give you a guarantee for all of your life. If you want to fail, just quit. If you quit, you'll fail. You want to be a bad example? Just quit. Get a bad attitude. Quit. Walk away. You'll fail. Nehemiah is not a failure. He just keeps praying. He's waiting for God to move. And we encourage each other to be men and women of action, but we have to be sensitive to the Spirit of God to be timely with our action. You can do things too soon. You can do things too late. But you want to, I don't know if any of you play golf or not. I don't. I threw my clubs away. There's a sweet spot that they call on the encounter of the face of the club to the ball. There's a sweet spot with maximum effectiveness, maximum distance. It's straight, it's true, it arcs just right, it spins just right. I want to be in that sweet spot with God. Not too much toe, not too much heel, or, oh, well, there's a bad one. I don't want to give excuses for my ministry anymore. I want to hit the sweet spot, and sometimes we just have to wait. You may know exactly what to do about a situation. Often you do. I believe you do. There's God-given wisdom. There's prompting of the Holy Spirit to your heart. There are things that God brings to you in visions, in dreams, in classes, in sermons. You know what to do. But there's more. You need to know when to do it. And that's just as important, maybe more important in the things of God. You've got to know when to do it. Nehemiah knows what to do. He's got to go help these people, build those walls. They're not completely down, but they're broken down. And there's parts of them that are in bad shape. And the gates have been burned by the enemies. I got to get over there and help them. He knows what to do. But it's not time yet. Sometimes, we kind of get a little heady and proud about it if we know what to do, and we just spread the news. Here's the good idea. Here's what you do. Yeah, you're right. But that's just part of it. The other part is when to move, when to thrust in, when to touch the door, or wait for the door to open. That's what Nehemiah is doing. He's waiting for God to open the door because God is working on, in this case, he's working on the situation, he's working on the circumstances, and he's working on the king's heart. This is the king that stopped the activity, the construction activity. This is the dude. And you're going to barge in there and tell him he did it wrong, and you want to reverse that whole thing, and you want, oh, really? You see how if you get in too soon before God touches the king's heart, you're going to mess things up. Do you trust God when no answer comes? Do you hear the door opening in your own situation today? I don't know your situation. And for good purposes, I don't want to know. That way I can speak freely without knowing who I'm touching. So, oh, Pastor Jonathan must have told him at lunch all about me. Let me assure you, not one word. Not one word about anybody's situation here. And so I have the freedom just to speak what God puts on me. And if it touches you, If the shoe fits, get a pair, buy a dozen, you know. If you like them, get a dozen in every color, you know. Because I don't know. I don't know your situation. I don't know your personal business. And I don't need to know. But I know that God has the answer. And when I convey that in this kind of a situation, when I convey the answer, don't think that I know the problem. I don't have that insight. Some people think they do. Maybe they do. I don't. But I have the answer. Wait for God to move. Nehemiah is waiting. And next week, chapter 2, you've already read chapter 2. The rest of you are on assignment. Read chapter 2 for next week. God is going to open the door in His time, in His way. And Nehemiah, telling you, he's like one of those guys that runs the 100-meter dash in the Olympics. If I came off the blocks that fast, I'd suffer problem. I'd have to see a chiropractor before I got 100 meters. How about you? They come off those blocks just like that. Usain Bolt is gone. He doesn't just start, he's gone. But he waits for the gun. Waits for the door to open. Nehemiah is going to be just like that. He's in the starting blocks, and God, next Sunday night, is going to open the door, and you're going to see him shoot through that door, and God's going to do the incredible. That means unbelievable. Unbelievable. And it's going to be good. I'm so glad that you came tonight. I trust that you have received something that is portable, that you can install in your life and take home with you. Bring your notebook next week. We'll put another yellow page together. And just one word about your brick. This is so symbolic of what we're doing. There aren't any operational manuals that come with bricks. You ever seen one? What can you do with a brick? You can break a windshield. You can throw it at your husband. You can use it as a doorstop. But one thing about bricks, when they're by themselves, they really have no function. They are meant to be together in a building, just like us. As God is building this local body, it's the relationship one to another as the bricks are put in their place. You can't have one wall with one brick. Nobody can move it. You have many bricks fit together. And I want you to take this in the right way and not be offended. Nehemiah is going to put people in their place. He knows what needs to be done. He knows the job. He knows everybody's ability. And he's going to put them in relationship like bricks and build a wall. It's not that he's putting anybody down. Somebody needs to be on the bottom. Somebody needs to be on the top. Somebody needs to be in the middle. But Nehemiah, God's appointed leader in this case, knows how to put a relationship between the bricks. We'll talk a little more about bricks in a week or two. But I hope that you'll put this somewhere where you can see it, remember it, on the dashboard of your vehicle, on the coffee table somewhere. Don't let it just be a throw toy with your kids, but let it start a conversation. You know, somebody will say, what in the world's that? Let me tell you. Let me tell you a story about Nehemiah. I'm going to tell you something. And then you can relate what's going on here, what your local Nehemiah is doing, putting this thing together, brick by brick by brick, and building something that God has in mind. So God bless you tonight. We're so glad you came. If you bring 10 people with you next week, we won't have room for them, but you could bring 2. All right? God bless you tonight. Thanks again.